Welcome back to the podcast. Gabe, Giannis, and I, we are joined by PhD of sports psychology, bodybuilder, jiu-jitsu athlete, and just total badass Mike Israetel. I really enjoyed this conversation. He kept it flowing strong, huh, Gabe?
Yeah, he's a colorful character with a lot to say, but it made for a really entertaining talk, man. I mean, you know, you can go into the ins and outs of fitness and training, and it could be a really boring conversation. But I think, you know, Mike really brings it to life in a way that I was super entertained. And I learned a lot researching before getting into the podcast, and then I learned a whole bunch more when we recorded. So this was a fun one. And we mentioned this at the end of the podcast. Like, I don't think we scratched the surface on the amount of things that we can really kind of dive into with Mike. So I'm excited to have him back on. I know that we're planning to do that, but this was a great episode.
Yeah, I mean, we barely scratched the surface in my opinion on a variety of different subjects, but the way that he broke down different methodologies or different concepts in like threes, I thought was super helpful. I love what we talk about like, hey, muscle growth, then kind of like this full range of motion strength, and then adding in endurance. And just as a framework for people to kind of build off of. And then not to mention, obviously, his talk at the end about how to avoid injury and how consistency is key. I had a lot of takeaways on that. And I'm looking forward to having him back on the show. But he definitely keeps the conversation flowing. This is I don't know, man, he's just got a really good positive attitude about it. And I'm fired up to have him back on. And I loved this episode as well. But that's it, man. Without any further ado, let's dive into a great episode with Dr. Mike. Let's get it. Mike, I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while. This is years ago, I knew of you through the CrossFit space and with everything at RP. And then I just started consuming a bunch of your YouTube content. And in particular, stuff that caught my eye was obviously things that I'm interested in, like the jiu-jitsu type stuff. Then you and I talked for like an hour on the phone. I was getting all fired up. And I was like, dude, we gotta do this long form and let other people get in on this conversation. So I just want to say thanks for taking the time today. Fired up to talk about all things fitness with you. But in particular, what do you have going on right now? Because I know you're getting ready for a bodybuilding competition and you've kind of put jiu-jitsu a little bit on the side. And so what does your training look like right now getting ready for the competition, and when is it?
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for having me on, guys. It really is an honor. I am getting ready for a bodybuilding competition that occurs in the middle of July, I think July 20th or something. It's one of those multiple day type of things. And it is Masters Nationals for the NPC for bodybuilding. And so I'm going there to try to see if I can look cool on stage and at least get people to say nice things about me. Low bar, high bars, win some stuff. So that's what I'm doing right now. And I guess I'm kind of like, 9 weeks out, I guess now, sort of, from that competition. So I'm having lots of fun in my daily life, which is sarcasm because it's miserable, but I'm trying to lean into it.
Bodybuilders, from my experience, are some of the most dedicated people I've ever seen. I used to work at a traditional health club when I was younger, and you'd watch these people come in and they'd start getting prepared for their show, and they'd start depleting water. They'd start, getting rid of salt. They'd start doing all these things. So 9 weeks out, are you doing any of those type of things? Like what does your typical training look like? And then when do you really start? Because I mean, most people, they say when you're actually on stage, like you feel like shit. Is that correct?
There are two schools of thought on that. One school of thought on that is that if you have sufficiently prepared your body to show your very best, your body is in a very extreme position, extreme with regard to how little body fat you have, extreme with regard to how much training fatigue you've accumulated, extreme with regards to your compartmentalization of water, which is to say as much water as possible in the muscles and as little water as possible under the skin. And because of the extremity of those things and how unusual they are, some people would say that you're not going to feel normal because you don't look normal. You look better than normal, but it's kind of like, what is it, like the models in New York say, like beauty is pain or whatever. Like they look like they're having fun on the modeling stage, but really they're just super hungry and miserable and the cocaine is wearing off. But so for bodybuilding, there are people that say like you're going to be at your kind of least pleasant feeling. There's another school of thought on that. And the school of thought is that you look really, really good. You look your best when ideally your fatigue is as low as it can be, and extreme attempts at recompartmentalization, peaking, water cutting, etc., end up making you look flatter and making you look more fatigued, and the stress can actually lead to some water retention under the skin, and so your physique doesn't pop like it's supposed to. And so you have those two different schools of thought. One school of thought is like, you do the work early so that you coast into your competition, actually ease up and relax on the way in, and then you look amazing. The other school of thought is like, if you feel amazing on stage, that means you didn't grind and work hard enough. I'm not sure how I feel about that, because I have yet to present a physique on stage in my own career that I think is like noteworthy. But my best physique ever was a result of feeling actually quite good on the day off. Like, I was very thirsty at some points because of the water manipulation, but I was very relaxed. I had a decent amount of energy. I felt great cognitively. And when you feel great, look great, I think there's definitely something to it. So I think a lot of the idea about you know, these guys look super jacked and strong, but they're actually at their weakest, believe it or not, comes from conventional media covering bodybuilding, like traditional media. And they love little bullshit, kind of like iconoclastic, seemingly contradictory narratives, because it's clickbait, essentially. Like, people want to believe that, you know, like, oh, like they see this bodybuilder on stage ripped, and people like that little bit of cleverness. Like, well, did you know that they're actually at their weakest? Like, shut up, Tom. They're stronger than you. They're better than you. You're not them. You suck. Take a fucking knee. See yourself out. Like, it's the cynical side of it. If people want to believe that there's something, it's like guys watching two black belts go at it in jiu-jitsu, be like, yeah, but I bet they can't do stand-up. Like, shut up. That guy will eat a fucking punch on the way to breaking you into pieces. You're not a part of this conversation. There's no weak point. It's like looking at a huge tank, like, yeah, but I bet, nope, the tank's better than you. It's better at combat. You suck. So there's a lot of that idea of like, oh, but the bodybuilders are their weakest. Like, that may be true for some people, and maybe that works. But there's another school of thought that, like, actually, you should be feeling pretty goddamn good, and then you feel good, your stress levels are lower, you look good, you do some manipulations, but the extreme manipulations that make you feel like shit is like rolling the dice. I think 1 time out of 10 you look unreal, 9 times out of 10 you look worse than you did a few days before. So that's kind of the lay of the land. I'm not exactly sure which one it is. The longer I do this, the more people I see being coached around me, the more I'm starting to think it's option 2, that you actually should be feeling pretty good on the day of the show, and that's how you look your best.
Man, I've never heard that take. That's super interesting. And it makes a lot of sense, right? Like the stress and fully beat up, because also as an outsider looking in, I've been very, very kind of like enthralled by the bodybuilding space, and have really enjoyed kind of looking at it, not as a participant, but just kind of like, you know, following some people and stuff. And I know that another big piece of it is, you know, your stage presence and how you pose and present. And so I would imagine that that stuff is so much more difficult to do if you're absolutely feeling your worst. But if you're out there and you feel good, you're just so excited, you put the work in, like, that's going to come out in how you pose and all of those other parts that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, are a big piece of winning at these competitions.
I can actually clarify a lot of what you said is totally right on. There are 2 types of posing in bodybuilding. One is hitting what are called the mandatory poses. That's when they line you guys up and everyone hits the same pose at the same time. If you're so fatigued that you can't hold the pose, that you look really, your transition from pose to pose is delayed. Like, some guys will take extra time to wind up, and by the time they've wound up, the judges already looked at everyone and you didn't look really good. And so they're like, just move on to the next pose. So in that part, it does make a notable difference if you have that fucking energy and you're ready to go. In the posing round, which is actually like when you go up and you get your music for a minute and you do your bullshit art crap and all this, you know, fucking Frank Zane shit, that actually is in most competitions simply not judged. Like, it just doesn't add to your total score. It's irrelevant. You could go in there and hit most musculars for 3 minutes straight or whatever, and they're like, all right, and that was that guy's next guy up. The judges don't even, like, barely even watch you while they're sitting there, but they're looking at you and they're like, oh, sometimes they're looking at their phones. They're literally not judging it. Whereas during the judging round, you're doing your poses, they're looking at everyone super quick, writing it down, who's rank, whatever. So yeah, it does help to have energy, especially if the energy is otherwise so low that you can't even do the mandatory poses really well. Then you're going to pay the price, because the judges are going to be like, I don't know how he looks when he has energy, but right now he looks like shit. And the only thing that matters about bodybuilding is how you look in like literally 3 minutes of judging you receive at a bodybuilding show. It's like 8 months 3 minutes. And if you can get it together and get all your poses to click right and go well, hey, that's really good. If not, it kind of sucks because, like, again, people care how you look in your hotel room later that day, earlier that morning with the cool glute striation shots under the hotel lighting, but that doesn't win you shows in the quite literal sense. So it is, if you're so depleted that you can barely pose properly, you made a mistake because you tried to do this thing that was going to make you look good, but it cost you so much energy. You can't look good. It's kind of like you're late for a date with someone and you run in and you're like sweaty and dilapidated. And she's kind of like, all right, so you're sweaty and dilapidated. This is hot. Like, nope, you screwed up. Running to the date was not going to be the answer. Like, it was just like, hey, I'll see you later, and show up 15 minutes later, but your suit fits and everything's great. She's like, okay, this works. So it's kind of like the process. The intent is to do better, but you go so far into it, you end up doing worse.
I want to ask a question about isolation. So you and I were having this conversation about CrossFit and about how really it's work capacity, it's adding a clock, it's getting as much work done, it's combining these multi-joint movements. And then Gabe and I talk about this a lot. He probably has his Arnold Bible there with him right now. Yep. He's going to pull it up, of course.
All right.
So Gabe is really interested in bodybuilding type, workouts. And we've had this conversation on the show quite a bit about how we've had to, or at least for me, I've had to start adjusting my mindset that a successful set in like isolation and bodybuilding is really trying to like engage a specific muscle group, connect my brain with my body, really hit that versus just getting more reps. And that's a really hard path to change because I'm so used to like success is more reps. And I told you this on the phone when I was with Hani Rambod, like we were doing a movement and I wanted to kind of like kip it. I wanted to like use it but I realized like, dude, it wasn't about more weight. It wasn't about whatever. It was about hitting it right and then kind of burning it out. So I'm curious, how is that like, because you're in the CrossFit space, you're obviously in the bodybuilding space. What have you seen between those two schools of thought and how should you blend them? And then the final piece I want about is, dude, when you're on stage and you're holding a flex, is it as hard as I think it is? Because it looks really hard. We'll start with the first part. I got distracted on the second part.
No worries. So this is all really, really good stuff. When you are doing a performance sport, your job is to do, one of my mentors in sports science says that sport is all about who can do the work faster. And if you think about it, you're like, well, actually that's really true. Like whatever team can get the most baskets in and whatever basketball game time, like wins the game. When at CrossFit literally is whoever can do the most work in the shortest time wins. And so in that perspective, and that includes weightlifting and powerlifting as well, is you have to leverage as much of your body as possible, give yourself the smallest energetic cost possible, make sure the fewest muscles are isolated and thus become the weak link and limiting factor possible so that you can get the job done. And that's the way to do it. But with bodybuilding, the perspective shifts to something like the opposite. It's you have to target your pecs. Your pecs being stimulated is the goal of the exercise. So if you manage to get more reps in such a way that your chest is doing the work, mission accomplished. If you manage to get more reps in such a way that de-stresses your chest and allows your shoulders and triceps and maybe some other musculature in your body to help with those reps, then yeah, you did more reps, but was the chest actually stimulated? It's kind of like, I'm going to make is this a family show or can I make some not so pleasant analogies?
We'll see what you come up with. Go for it.
Sexual content, okay?
We're all good. We're all good.
No. Well, all right. So it's kind of like if you're, I'll try to phrase this as gently as possible. If you are trying to make love to your significant other, the number of strokes is just totally irrelevant, right? Can you imagine like getting out of bed with your girl and you're like, oh, that was an hour. And she's like, amazing. High five. You're both sweaty. You go to the shower. But like, that's ridiculous because you're not there to work for an hour. You're actually there to do very, very specific things. And if you both just not like crazy, but it only takes 15 minutes, it's not like you're like, oh, dang, we finished early. It's like mission accomplished in the biggest way possible. So that's kind of, people sometimes misperceive that and they get into this mode where they're like, I'm in the gym to do work. And it's like, that's totally, totally true. but it's a very focused kind of work. Now, there is a possibility there where you spend so much focus that you end up decreasing the stimulus magnitude because you're trying to get real specific. And so guys will do this thing where they're like a hack squatting and they are like really connected with their quads. They're feeling everything through their quads. They're trying not to use their glutes. And then they end up taking half of the weight off the bar and kind of doing this almost art where they're moving and slowly and controlling and grooving. And they rack and they're like, man, I felt that in my quads. Like, that's cool. That's cool. But you can also feel your bicep contracting if you curl it against zero resistance just by yourself. I feel it. I feel that more than I'll feel it when I'm curling. The problem is feeling is dope if the feeling opens up your ability to torch the living shit out of that muscle. But if the torching competes with the feeling, you have a problem. So some guys will take it too far and they'll say, you know, like, it doesn't matter how much weight you lift, brother. It's like, it's all about intent. Like, no, that's totally wrong. What's correct is you have to have that intent to use that muscle that you want and push yourself really hard. That's tough. It's super counterintuitive to athletes because they're like, well, I push, then I just do what I do. It's like, no, you have to pay attention to what's going on and do what you do. And they're like, whoa, that's tough. Because a lot of people will say, oh, like a mind muscle connection, and they'll curl, like really feel it. And they're like, yeah, I'm bodybuilding. Like, nope, not you. There was like 10 reps away from failure. You're lifting half the weight you normally could. You have to, and this is a learned skill that takes a long time, is you have to learn how to try really, really hard in that narrow window of the technique that activates the muscles you want the most for them to be a limiting factor. The way that I've architected this kind of theoretically in bodybuilding long-term development is through three phases, three stages of training. Stage one is the beginner stage, where you're not even trying to train hard. You're just getting the technique down. Like, if you don't know, then CrossFitters are already easy because they already know good technique. Like, if I tell a CrossFitter, how do you squat? They know how to do a high bar squat, and they do it really, really well. That's for beginners. First couple of years of your training career, just do the technique well, and, you know, put on weight on the bar when you could do the good technique. If the weight's too heavy to do good technique, take some weight off the bar. You're going to, you guys know, like, first 2-3 years of your career, you get stronger anyway. Guys are obsessed. Like, how can I get the strongest in a year? Like, the hell is wrong with you? Who gives a shit? So first is build the base of technique. Then intermediate stage, roughly 3 to 7 years through your bodybuilding career, is to try to keep that good technique. But then in the context of that good technique, push yourself really hard. So you have two rules. Rule 1, push hard. Rule 2, never deviate from good technique. In your advanced era, 7 years plus of training, is when you start to really lean in to the mind-muscle connection, to connecting with your muscles, feeling out where stuff is going. Do I need to tweak my elbows a little bit this way to feel my pecs more, a little bit this way? That's extra super bonus points that rests on two big ideas. One is you have a fundamental basis of really good technique already. 2 is you're going real hard. 3 is now you're using that internal cueing and perception. If I take a person off the street and I try to take them through a Hani Rambod workout where that requires mind-muscle connection, it's a non-starter. 1 out of every 100 people just has fucking raw talent and they can just do it. Most people just can't do it. It's tough for even CrossFitters. Look, CrossFitters know how to train with good technique. They know how to go hard. Holy crap. But that mind-muscle connection stuff, they basically enter bodybuilding as advanced people already, or the beginning of advanced. And then it takes them weeks and weeks and months and years to connect with the muscle, to make sure that the way they're doing it is the muscle, not just, oh, it's the movement. And, oh yeah, I guess I have lats. I hope they're active. I know I did 10 pull-ups. So that's definitely a big deal, but there's levels to it and there's nuance to it. And it's one of those one does not simply kind of things. And a lot of people try to coach beginners through the mind-muscle connection. It is a grotesque waste of time.
Man, I love hearing you talk about all this stuff because I feel like I've experienced it in my training, especially very recently. Like, I've really kind of like tried to implement this stuff probably for like, I don't know, I want to say like 2.5 years now. It all kind of started when I knew I was going to be a dad. And just now do I feel like I'm actually starting to feel some of those things. And that's how long it's taken. Like, it's literally 2.5 years. And just now, like, little things click of like, oh, you know, bent over row, if I'm pulling more towards my belly button versus my shoulder, which I always used to do, because then I could do the heavier dumbbell, I actually finish the set and I don't feel the pump or here. It's literally in my lat.
Yes.
And it's just, it's so fascinating how it takes slowing things down and going less weight. But to your point, I can 100% see how you can swing too far in that direction. And now you're doing not significant weight. Sure, you can feel your lat working, but is it working enough? Which I think is, I think that a lot of people plateau, specifically people that go from like CrossFit style training to then, okay, I want to put on muscle, do this bodybuilding type stuff. I think that people really underestimate how hard you have to work to put on muscle, especially because, like you said, someone that's been doing CrossFit is already going in as a kind of like already intermediate advanced lifter. Like the amount of work that it takes and how much intentionality, but also effort needs to be in those working sets, I think is very easy to underestimate, especially when, there isn't like a leaderboard or a time to beat. That's like very easy for you to be like, well, my friend got faster, so I got fitter. There is no black and white thing in this type of training, because even if you do a heavier weight this week than you did last week, but to your point, the technique broke down a little bit, you're not actually progressing the way that you want to progress to put on muscle. So I love hearing you talk about this stuff, because I feel like it's exactly where I'm kind of now with my training.
I love it. One of the things in the RP Hypertrophy app, through which I train and a ton of folks that we work with train, it actually asks you like, how are your pumps? And then it asks you, how sore are you in this muscle from the last time you trained it? Because if you target the muscle well and go hard, you get nasty pumps, nastier pumps, and nastier soreness after. If you don't go hard enough, you get less of both. If you don't target well, you get less of both. So through pumps and soreness and other subjective metrics, you can start to become aware of like, ooh, I did the work in the last workout, but my lats didn't really get sore. Next time I'm going to focus on my lats a bit more and do that fucking blowtorch method of just lighting them on fire. You do that and you're like, holy shit. The next day you're like, oh my God, my lats are sore. Like, boom, mission accomplished. How could your lats not have been stimulated if they got sore? Something happened there. So a lot of people with muscle groups that are weaker for them are also people that can't connect with their muscles as much. You get to train your biceps, they just don't really ever seem to get pumped or sore or anything. What the fuck am I doing wrong? And then the guy who has 24-inch arms next to you, he does one curl. He's like, oh, I can't move my arm, I pump. You're like, damn it. So you'll tend to see this like even within a single individual, muscles that they can really connect with and really go hard into with good activation, which is a learned skill. Even between their different muscles of the body, your more gifted muscles will just do the work and take over and take all the strain. You ever see people with big ass quads? When they squat, you're like, I can tell you that's all quads. And that's not by accident. It's usually their quads are so dominant. They're like, hey, we'll take care of this. Whereas people with smaller quads, your body's trying to do the work. So it goes, okay, our quads, they suck. Let's let the glutes do most of the work. It's like giving the offensive lineman the ball and be like, just pound through the line and just go and put the fucking ball down. Like, don't we have running backs? Like, yeah, but they all suck. So it's on you now. So like people with huge glutes and small quads saying, man, I can't get my quads to go. Like, that's a serious problem that's going to take some effort to try to resolve. And it's always going to be a battle. You have to fight a little bit. Muscles that are genetically gifted for you, they're like, dude, like if you have big forearms, you do dumbbell presses and you're like, oh my God, I have forearm pump. Like, no, I can tell you, Jared Feather, one of my best friends and a colleague, our IFBB pro coach here at RP, he has like some of the world's nastiest calf genetics, where just calves are just nonsense. He did calves like once in his life, I think. He trained calves with like 3 sets of 10, and he was sore for 2.5 weeks. Like, they're not supposed to happen. And he walks around and he'll get a calf pump. And you're like, okay, this whole mind muscle connection just comes easier to your calves. Whereas for his back or for his biceps, it's tougher. So it's on him to try to do in his body what we've been talking about now, is really combine that laser focus with that intensity. One or the other is easy to do. Both at the same time, holy crap. Similar to jiu-jitsu. You can freak out and just be fucking rage monster, and then you're just going to get swept because you're like psychotic and you don't even know what's going on. Or you can be like a technique master, but you go to a competition and someone just bowls right through you because you weren't ready for that kind of intensity. Who are the best jiu-jitsu practitioners? The people that can bring that fire through excellent executed techniques. That's a dangerous person. I don't want to roll with that person.
All right, guys, we're taking a break from the podcast to talk to you about the most exciting thing that we've launched at Train Hard in a while, and that is the Train, Protect, Provide collection that is now live on the Train Hard shop. If you've been listening to the podcast or reading our emails, you've heard us talk about these 3 words: train, protect, provide. These are the 3 pillars that are at the foundation of everything we're trying to do here at Train Hard. Train, pretty self-explanatory. We train hard to be prepared for anything life is going to throw our way. Protect, it's not about going out there and looking for trouble. It's just about being ready in the case that trouble finds us. And then provide, which is probably the most meaningful one for me, isn't just about putting food on the table. It's not just about providing financially, but it's about being there and being present and being this force of stability for your family at all times and providing anything that they need at any time. And that's something that I aspire to do every single day as a dad and a husband. And I know it's something that's super important to Jay as well. So we're super excited to now have Train, Protect, Provide on some awesome apparel. The team took so much time to pick out some t-shirts, some crew necks, and some hoodies that are a little different than what we've done in the past, but are different in a really good way in that they are so comfortable and super versatile that you can work out in them or you can wear them out and they are going to look great. So go to the shop right now, the Train Hard shop, check out the Train, Protect, Provide collection. And since you're listening to this on the podcast, use code podcast and that'll get you free shipping. So head over to the shop, check it out, but let's get back to the show.
I got to ask, I mean, you laid me up. We've talked a lot about bodybuilding, and you along your journey, you're a brown belt, right? In jiu-jitsu?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So, you've been in the game for a long time, same as I, for jiu-jitsu, and you've also been around fitness forever, right? Exercise,
25 years.
Yeah, forever. And so I'm curious, what role do you think, one of the things we talk a lot about on this show is the role as a dad, as a husband, as a man to protect and provide. And what we talk about is run, jump, climb, lift, be able to have that capacity if needed, fight, and then provide experiences, also be able to provide for our families by using the gym as an outlet to show up best as we can at work, but to never allow fitness to inhibit what we need to do. And I'm curious from a lifestyle perspective, right now your focus, the stage is to get ready for a bodybuilding competition. What would you say is a good balance for a guy or for anyone who wants like overall general physical fitness? Like what blend would you put of high intensity training versus, and maybe grappling, we can talk about that in a minute, but high intensity training and then bodybuilding? Would you just do bodybuilding, or do you think there's gaps there? Would you just do high intensity, or is there gaps there? And what would that look like in a given week for someone who want to be overall fit, I guess is my question.
Yeah, that's a really great thing. Really great question. So I think it's a little tough to really nail down what overall fit means. Mm-hmm. I think the sport of CrossFit has done a very good job of that. And so your training to get overall fit, which has an asterisk next to it because it's real tough to say what that even really means. But if you are interested in training to be more overall fit, I would say there are a few components you need to take care of. Probably like 3. One is growing muscle mass, because muscle mass is kind of the core in some sense of your ability to produce force. So some of the training you do at the gym is going to have to be kind of muscle growth style training. Another focus you have to have is strength. And strength combines a couple of things into it. One is the ability to produce high forces, but also is the ability to produce high forces in a way that accomplishes your task with a very large range of motion. So if you want to get overall fit, you better be dunking every squat to where your asshole touches the ground. You better know how to do pull-ups and dips. And what do you guys call those things? I forgot what they're called when you do a pull-up.
Maybe thrusters. Bar muscle ups.
But yeah, bar muscle ups, like just over the bar. Like if you're hanging on a cliff, like that's what you do, right?
Yeah.
Stuff like that, ultra high degree of competency, and basically Olympic weightlifting derivatives do really well with this. Strongman derivatives do really well, like stone loading, tire drags, tire flips, things like that. Real world, putting your body in deeply uncomfortable positions and generating a lot of force out of those positions so that you have the muscle, but now also you have the mobility, the flexibility, the injury prevention. Like it's really difficult to injure a strongman in real world because he's going to get injured if he's the 1,000-pound yoke breaks him in half. If you're like, hey, can you pick up this couch and move it? He's like, no problem. He's not going to pull his back moving your couch because your couch weighs 200 pounds. The yoke weighs 1,000. It's not even close. Also, you bend down to pick up the couch. It's like a partial deadlift. He's used to doing deficit deadlifts of 600 pounds. There's nothing you're going to challenge yourself. So there's muscle mass. There is large range of motion, athletic, high force movements. And then lastly, I would say you have to have an endurance component. So I would say most folks it would behoove them to do some kind of endurance 2 to 4 times a week, which can be as simple as the elliptical at probably 140 to 160 or 70 beats per minute heart rate consistently for minutes and minutes and minutes on end. And really, like, forget about the beats per minute crap. You have to do your cardio in such a way that you are sweating and breathing heavy and very uncomfortable, especially towards the end. That's how you know you're working hard. It can be elliptical, it can be swimming, it can be running, it can be cycling, it can be jiu-jitsu, and it can be lifting weights with compound antagonistic supersets and never really taking breaks. That all can do it, but that cardiovascular component is really good. And I would say, like, if you want real world function, per managing the fatigue well and your joints being okay with it, I think some sort of running is probably good, simply because that's how humans get around. That's how they ambulate. It's really difficult to say you're overall fit if someone's like, hey, we got to catch a flight and it's leaving in 3 minutes. We got to run across this whole airport. And you're like, oh, no, I just do grappling and bodybuilding. I don't do running. And they're like, so you're not really able-bodied. They're like, well, yeah, I guess I'm not, but check this out. I'm fucking jacked. That's not going to work. So my preferred running situation is usually, this is terrible, but repeat 200 and 400 meter sprints, and usually not sprints, but half sprints. Because if you think about applications to tactical combat scenarios, applications to emergency scenarios, let's say really screwed up, but let's say there's like an active shooter in the building next to you or in your building, you're not going to run 10 miles. Like, nobody shoots that far. And at a jog, but if you can half sprint carrying your backpack and your child, and you can run 400 meters at a half sprint to get the fuck away from danger, yeah, you're in shape. So actually my preferred method of the most real world cardio you can do in some sense is half sprint intervals of 200 and 400 meter dashes, essentially, ideally with a loaded weight vest. If you can, and maybe you carry something like a really good drill for folks trying to get in shape for special operations, is you get a mock weapon, like whatever loadout you usually use, except like 10 pounds heavier, and you fucking carry it and you run 400 fucking meters with like, like low ready position. Like, that sucks. And you have your vest on, which is like 60 pounds, is way more than your loadout you would take into combat in a specific scenario. So like, if you can run 200 meters half sprints 4 times in a row with 20-second breaks between, with your whole loadout times 1.5 on your body and in your hands, when you get the combat scenario, it's unlikely you're going to have to sprint 200 meters at a single time in any close quarters combat. So you're going to be over prepared for that. And for daily life, for all that stuff, you're going to be way over prepared. So that's kind of my preferred approach. Now, of course, if you want to get really adept at moving, you got to swim and you got to climb and do all that other stuff. And that's a whole other world of getting really, really good at physical movement. Yeah.
Man, second person that we've had that's like, an expert in the field of like fitness and exercise that brings up the importance of sprints. But I love the take of, it not just being these like super short bursts, but little longer half sprints carrying something. Like, you're right. In real world, like, I need to get from point A to point B. You're probably going to have to carry something, because you're going to be either carrying someone or something already, or maybe you have someone, child, whoever, that you need to help move. And then that 200, 400 distance, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's also brutal, by the way. It's terrible.
Yeah, brutal.
So it'll harden your ass up too, because you're like, well, if I can do this, like, the rest of this is kind of easy. Yeah.
Dude, we were doing a couple of days ago, I host a weekly men's club workout, and this last week the workout was just hill sprints. That's it. And we did 5, 4, 1. So it was 5 short, 4 medium, which those are really shitty, and then 1 all the way to the top of this hill. And dude, I mean, out of the 50 guys who are running it, I'd say 10 of them didn't just lay on the ground up at the top for like 5 minutes, because you get to the top, you're just exhausted. But to your point, I love the way you broke that down. I'm hearing you correctly. It's like muscle growth. So I look at that more like a bodybuilding, everything we've been talking about so far in this episode. And then you talk about that strength, and CrossFit would really define that as more of like a functional movement, right? Moving a large load a long distance quickly. And I like the area that you added to that, where it's like, dude, you got the bodybuilding and the muscle, but you're also now utilizing these compound movements that encourage full range of motion, better flexibility, stuff like that, which I thought is awesome. Then your final piece, obviously the endurance factor. I mean, if you don't have that, but I love the way you broke that down. I really appreciate that. So does that kind of correlate for you? Like what made you dive into jiu-jitsu and why jiu-jitsu versus other stuff?
It's a good question. How do I answer this best? One of my proximate reasons for starting jiu-jitsu was that I was doing cardio for bodybuilding, and I just got so sick of like incline walking on the treadmill. I was like, I should do cardio in a way that also is fun. And I used to wrestle when I was a kid. I wrestled kind of informally with everyone that I knew when I was really young. And then I wrestled in high school. It's kind of like grappling's kind of in my spirit. My dad wrestled with me when I was like a really young child, and apparently we both really liked it. So it never left. And so my jiu-jitsu journey began when I was like, I think 29 years old, basically 10, 11 years ago. And I had a few friends. Dr. Jen Case was actually a coworker of mine at the university. I just got the job there, like literally that end of the summer. And I met her when I was interviewing there, and she was already like super, super awesome competitive jiu-jitsu. And I was like, hey, like I want to train when I get over here. And at the time she was like, oh yeah, cool. And later when we were much better friends, she was like, I never thought you would show up, because, you know, you guys have been through this with, I'm sure, tons of people. Everyone's like, yeah, man, I'm going to do it. And they just never show up. Like, this is like standard jiu-jitsu. Or they show up once.
I've heard that a few times. Yes.
Yeah. So she's like, I never thought you'd do it. So I did it. And then I stuck with it. Another thing is I got a really great piece of advice from my friend, Dr. Melissa Davis. My friends are all doctors, apparently. She won Purple Belt Masters Worlds in her division a little while back. And she goes, hey, so I wish someone told me this when I started, but you're starting jiu-jitsu now. I'm going to tell you this right now. Your first year is going to suck. Just eat it, and then it'll get better. And I was like, okay, noted. And for me, because I wrestled, because I was already really strong, it was only the first 6 months that sucked. But if Mel didn't tell me that, I almost certainly would have quit, because I was like, this is awful. My joints hurt. I just get beat up every day. My powerlifting and bodybuilding stuff that I do is like taking a pretty big hit. Like, why? So it was really, really great to receive that advice of this. That's why I stayed in it until it got fun. But then fundamentally, the reason why I do jiu-jitsu deep down, this sounds weird, but it's just like, what do they say? This is my truth or whatever. It's just how I feel. I'm going to say it. It's going to sound kind of strange. But it's all meant well. And I'm not criminally prone. That's the first thing I'll say to set this up. I have thought about violence every single day of my life, or as long as I've been alive. Like the first time I ever saw Dragon Ball Z, I was like, this is the worst animation ever. Who the hell did this? The second time I ever saw it, I was like, oh my God, they're throwing planets at each other. I want to do this. And so I can't stop thinking about physical combat with other humans. I never could. And it fascinates me beyond belief. And I'm at my best spirit energy when I've just been beaten to shit and submitted 10 times by a stud black belt. And I have nothing more to worry about or give this world. I have no anxiety. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And of course, it's also fun beating the shit out of people. But combat, like getting home and letting the water run down you in the shower and realizing your whole brow ridge is like basically open skin at this point. I just love it. I'm like, yes, like the scars, the fucking black eyes, every single, I want it. I want to be in the swirl. I want to be in the shit. I want to be getting beat up. I want to beat people up. I just want to fight. All the time. If I don't do jiu-jitsu for a couple of days, I have dreams at night where I'm doing jiu-jitsu and beating people up. And I used to, before I was technical, I would lose a lot of fights in my dreams and I didn't know what I was doing. You guys know that dream state where you're confused and you're like, damn it, I wish I had all my brain power. Nowadays, I'm like technical. I'm pulling fucking outside singles on people in dreams and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. So the fundamental reason why I do jiu-jitsu, because it's really not great for my bodybuilding. Like it beats the shit out of me. It fatigues me, injures me. Like I just want it. I want it. Like, I want to get hurt. I want to hurt people, and not hurt people in the sense of debilitate them.
Yeah.
You know, that alpha male shit, that two giant gorillas at the zoo going, "Rrr." I'm the guy that's like, yes, let me in there. I want to get in there. That's why I do jiu-jitsu. Just, that's straight up.
Yeah. Gabe, out of all the answers we've heard, I mean, I don't know if I've ever presented it that same way, but that was it.
Yeah, man. It sounds genuine, sounds honest. I mean, I love the fact that you stuck with it. I think that's kind of the biggest thing. And I mean, I haven't delved my toe in the jiu-jitsu world yet. I tell Jason all the time that he's going to convince me eventually. Although I haven't done the thing where I've said, hey, I'm going to do it, and then don't do it. Once I say I'm going to do it, I'll definitely do it.
Good.
But no, I can definitely see that being something that a lot of people say. That was cracking me up. They're like, yeah, I'll be there. And then like, yeah, okay, sure.
No, for sure. And, you know, I don't judge people for that, because it's like, dude, jiu-jitsu sucks. It's people fighting you and trying to hurt you. It's sweat. It's disgusting. Like, you get injured from it. It makes you age faster and shit. You guys know that meme where it's like, an old dude with white hair, and he's like, I just started doing jiu-jitsu and I'm 29 years old. You're like, what the hell happened to that guy? But yeah, there's like, dude, when I get to tournaments and I'm typically in the ultra heavy division, I see like the big guys and I just get hungry, man. I'm like, oh, I want that motherfucker, man. It's like that feeling of like a strike in bowling when all the pins fall. When you take a big dude down and he falls, it's like fucking cutting down a big tree. You're like, yes, fuck yes. Just like that, just getting in there. And like, even when you get your ass beat, there's something so liberating about it. It's so strange. Like, a black belt just beat me up. What more do I have to prove to this world? Jiu-jitsu is so anti-ego. You cannot have an ego for a long time in jiu-jitsu. Someone like Roger Gracie or Gordon Ryan will eventually pull it the fuck out of your ass, literally. And
have you rolled with Gordon yet?
No, hell no. Don't bring shit up like that. Good God, I hope he never sees this podcast. I'm sure it's a confusing case. I've rolled with people that have it. You know what I mean? That thing, world-class people. And typically, you're like, the experience is you're doing things, but nothing works. And then they seem to not be trying, but they just take your back every time. And you're like, do I know things? Like, you beat up white belts and blue belts and purple belts, you feel like you're the man. And you go up against someone real serious, that next level, and you're like, I don't know how to do jiu-jitsu. It's really strange. I had an opportunity to watch Roberto Jimenez. I don't know if you guys know who that is. He's one of the dominant grapplers. He won like every single IBJJF event up until like black belt. Like, he won worlds, every single belt. And he's been, you know, toasting people at black belt. And one of my friends, Will Starks, who's a pro MMA fighter, phenomenal grappler in his own right. I think he's a brown belt. He hip tossed Roberto Jimenez when he was coming to visit me, and I was training with Roberto at his gym at the time. He hip tossed him successfully. And as Roberto was falling, he took Will's back. No. Fuck do you do? What do you do about that, man? I threw the guy and he ended up on my back.
Nothing. There's nothing you could do. That's just reps.
Have you rolled with Gordon?
Reps. What's that? I've rolled with Gordon. Yeah. I've had the fortunate or unfortunate, you know, actually, when we're recording this, Nikki Rod and Mason Fowler just fought last night. I don't know if you
how'd
caught
that go?
In.
I didn't.
It was a good fight. They went 10 minutes, no submission only. Neither one got submission. And then 5 minutes overtime. And Mason ended up losing on points. Nikki ended up mounting him. But yeah, when to your point, I rolled with Gordon and we were going from top mount. Like, I was in his mount, and like, I'm really trying. Like, I'm legit trying. We were in no-gi. I was trying to hold him. And dude, like, just, I don't know, man. Like, it just shows there's just levels to the game. And I think it just keeps you humble, because someone like that, you can walk in there and think, oh, maybe I can hold him down for like a little bit, you know, like, I'm not going to win. Like, I know I'm not going to win, but I could kind of like hold my own, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're thinking in your head. No, that's just not the way it works.
No. And the thing is, like, I remember there was, I forgot what the guy's name was. One of the Brazilians from way back in the late 90s. And I forgot this. I'm really sorry, but I just forgot his exact name. Ribeiro or some shit like that. One of the old legends. And this is a guy that like had won everything and beat everyone. And then he would like, he wanted money. So he got a job at like a bank, and he would show up on his lunch break and put on his gi and roll with guys and then leave and go back to work. I remember there was a story where there was a world champion sitting there in the gym crying after a roll with this guy. And this other black belt comes up to him, also world champion. He's like, dude, are you okay? He's like, this guy just fucked me. I just won ADCCs like 3 weeks ago. And this guy just walked through me. And he goes, oh, don't worry. He does everybody like that. It's kind of like, this guy's just going to beat you. It's just going to happen. So just be okay with that. And it's humble because, like, you think you're the man and then some other dude beats you. You're like, am I the man? But then you can ascend beyond that. I think most of the people in jiu-jitsu that have really thought this through a lot and really simmered in it, they realize there is no the man. There is, you are a human being like everyone else. You do your goddamn best and you leave it all on the mat. And that's it. When you go to the store later, you go to get your car washed, you talk to real humans, you're humble and you're respectful and you're kind. Because yeah, you could probably beat the shit out of them, but you know what getting the shit beat out of you feels like. And that put you in your place, which is the appropriate place of even keel with every other human in the world. And you start to think you have too high of an opinion of yourself. You go in there and get some MMA rounds or get some jiu-jitsu rounds. You'll be feeling fucking mortal real soon. Unless you've never been defeated convincingly. I mean, John Jones probably doesn't have to feel like a human being because no one can beat him up. I don't know. Maybe he'll get that medicines later in his life or something. I'm not sure. Gordon Ryan hasn't lost in I don't know how long. So
yeah.
One of the things that I think I've noticed, as we're having this conversation, that I think makes like CrossFit, what we're talking about in bodybuilding and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I think super unique is, I think what CrossFit did early on that made it special was the fact that it like taught people that were at an age where they weren't learning new skills. So like the benefits of like, wow, like the snatch, these higher skill movements, like there's something to be said about not just doing fitness where you're doing the same movements over and over to improve strength and this, but like really kind of like learning new skills for the cognitive benefits, for the challenges, for the sense of accomplishment once you get it. And I think that what we were talking about before with finding that muscle brain connection in bodybuilding, like that's been huge for me. And it's taken me a lot of work and it's a learned skill, and like actually feeling sore in the places I want to be sore after a session where I haven't done that in months is like such a rewarding feeling. And hearing you guys talk about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's like exactly the same thing. Like you're getting cardio now in a way where it's not just riding on the elliptical for 60 minutes. It's you're learning new skills, and there's constantly you're never gonna like learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You're never going to be done. You're never going to be like, all right, well, I checked off all the boxes. Like that's it. There's always going to be something to learn. There's always going to be something to improve. And I think that is a necessary like facet of whatever you do for fitness that you can find in kind of these different ways, but I think it is necessary.
Yeah. One of the things, to your point, I've never really thought too deeply about this, but it's something fascinating. Another benefit of having that, like being an adult and learning new things, is obviously all the benefits you stated. But one of the other benefits is, I think, the development or reinvigoration of the belief in yourself that an old dog can learn new tricks. A lot of us get good at whatever we're good at, and we purposefully and intelligently do much less of the stuff we're not good at, because that's how specialization and trade work in modern economy. Like an eye surgeon is better off doing more eye surgeries and washing his dishes less. Somebody else probably do that for him. But because you put yourself in uncomfortable situations and learn new things, and as an adult, it may reinvigorate that faith in you that like, oh, I can be adaptable. I can be put in an uncomfortable situation where I'm really out of my element, and I can over time develop some kind of competency, feel the ground a little bit under my feet. And that's really cool. A lot of people do not like to start jiu-jitsu as adults, even if all of their other variables, like they have the time for it, they have the interest in it, they are physically fit and healthy, and they're not getting hurt. They don't like to do it because it's too humbling. It really shows that like none of your shit that you got from the rest of your world means anything. Like you can be like, Los Angeles's best lawyer, and the gas station attendant beat the shit out of you at practice. And you're like, but I thought I was the guy with the Bugatti. People are supposed to beat me up. You've been good at what you've been doing, and everyone around you has been singing your praises for so goddamn long. That step down from the pedestal of you are competent to you suck, the first year of jiu-jitsu, possibly longer, is a step too far for some people. And so I'm super glad my friend Mel told me, like, look, the first year is just going to suck. Just get through it. And that was super, super good advice. So Gabe, if you ever get into jiu-jitsu, remember this. Do not expect it to be fun up front. Everyone's going to beat the shit out of you. 10-year-old kid at class is going to beat the shit out of you. Actually, Dr. Jen Case, who since then won 11 Masters World Championships. She won Pan Am's, a black belt. She did it all. When she rolled with me, the whole first week of jiu-jitsu, I rolled with other people. I drilled other people. Then like Saturday, her and I rolled. I believe she submitted me like more than 6 times in 6 minutes. And,
legit.
Legit. Oh yeah, legit. Fuck, dude. I was a 240-pound power lifter. I could bench like, I did that same year. I incline pressed with a pause, 335 for 10 or 12 or some shit. It's on YouTube. Like, I wrestled for 4 years. Like, I'm an adult male, god damn it. And she just took everything from me. And I was laughing. I thought it was the fucking greatest thing in the world. It's like fighting Wonder Woman or some shit like that. It was hilarious, but not everyone takes it that way. And when the purple belt girls beat the shit out of you in front of everyone 3 days in a row in class, some people just don't come back.
No.
And so, it was a kind of an instant test of, do you have what it takes to keep going? And I'll say another beautiful thing about jiu-jitsu is it's going to give you a near Buddhist-like familiarity with losing. I've lost a ton in my career. I've lost shitloads of every bodybuilding show I've ever done. Basically, I've lost. And like my last show that I did last summer, it was a real big disaster for me. I did a bunch of shit wrong. I took a placing that was, I thought, totally appropriate for me to take, but at the same time, like I was interested in a much higher placing. And, people were really trying to tell me, hey, you're good, blah, blah, blah. And I ended up making this Instagram post where like, guys, I'm a loser. I've been losing my whole life. Is absolutely super familiar territory with me. And it's totally fine. What am I going to do? You win, you pick up the pieces, you do your best next time. You lose, you pick up the pieces and do your best next time. And that's easy to say, but jiu-jitsu will teach you that to your face. It's take your face and put it in the piss of losing long enough to where you're like, losing's whatever. You tap or you lose on points. You do this, you fuck off. 30 seconds goes by, the clock rings again, you slap hands and you go in. And that's like an analogy for life too, because you lose all the time in life. You get demoted, you get fired, you don't get the promotion, blah, blah, blah. Your wife leaves you for another man and then he moves in and he kicks you out. This is just my life. All jokes aside, Jason said, oh, what? Really? Holy shit, this went off the rails. But you're going to take a lot of L's in life.
Keep it going, baby. Keep it going. I love this conversation, man, because obviously we're talking about things that I'm super fired up about. And
Sure.
for the record, Gabe is learning new skills. He actually, did you get your pilot's license yet? He's very close.
Very close, but it all took a pause when baby 2 came, but to be continued, but yeah, very close.
Oh, look, raising a child is 10 times harder than getting a pilot's license and about 100 times harder than doing jiu-jitsu.
It's more than 10 times harder.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, pilot's license, fuck that, dude. That shit scares the shit out of me, man. Like a 350-pound guy could hurt me, but like as soon as you're 100 feet at altitude, that plane crash is going to kill you 100%, so I'm out. But also, you don't want someone with Jewish athleticism to fly a plane. That doesn't work. JK, hopefully don't get canceled for that joke. But yeah, if jiu-jitsu at the very least will expose you to losing a ton, and that allows you to become really good at taking L's and moving forward. And a lot of people, even who are really good at stuff, they don't take losses a lot. It's just they're so good. And there's a certain hardness they lack. You give me someone who's lost 100 times and then won a few, that's a hard motherfucker. You give me someone that's won 100 times. Do you guys remember, I think Cus D'Amato was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he was talking about Mike Tyson, and he was like, every time Mike Tyson came up against an opponent who was at his level, he folded and he lost. And every time he won, it was against guys he was just going to plow through anyway. This is not a mentally strong person. And I had 2 thoughts about that. Thought number 1 was, damn, that's deep as fuck. And thought number 2 is like, does Tyson know that this guy said this? Because I wouldn't want to say things like that about Mike Tyson. He's a real human in the world that could probably knock your head off your body, but like, what do I know?
Man, I remember that clip. I remember that was a really controversial take, but yeah. I mean, he kind of had the receipts to like back it up. He literally pinpointed, and I'm not like a huge boxing fan, so I was just taking it for his word. But yeah, he was like, what were the fights where it was like actually a battle and Tyson folded? The people he beat because he was just like a specimen.
Because he's Tyson.
Right. Yeah. No, I remember that vividly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He's got a fight coming up. I wanted to ask you.
What do you guys think about that? Real quick. What do you think about that?
Oh man, got to get money, got to get paid, I guess. They seem like
true.
They seem like really big opportunities for, both people to make money, but I don't know, man. I don't know how much someone of that age should be taking any sort of beating. And from what I've heard, and again, I'm not a combatives expert at all. I'm basically just mimicking everything Rogan says, but Jake Paul is like, apparently like, he's not just a YouTuber. Like he's
a legit boxer.
Like he's very, very good. So I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know how I would feel about like, if Tyson was, I don't know, part of my family, someone I care about, someone of that age putting themselves in that kind of risk. I don't know the risk reward there, but seems like there's obviously a lot of people that are going to watch. There's a lot of money made. So
Jason, what do you think about it?
When I see stuff like this come up, I think that if the market wants it and it's going to encourage it, let it ride. Like,
my man.
If the market is speaking and saying, "Hey, we want to see this thing, whatever it is," and there's an opportunity for many people to benefit from it financially, and then others at home to get entertainment from it, and it works in this symbiotic way.
Both parties consented to it, clearly.
Exactly. If everybody consents to it, if everybody's, having, if people at home can get entertainment, create a show out of it, whatever, and if they can get paid and find fulfillment for whatever reason that is, then dude, let the market speak and let's let it go. That's just kind of like my overall opinion about it.
Yeah, that's dope. I think that obviously, like, you bet on youth 9 times out of 10, but I will say this for the record, to quote Wesley Snipes from the movie Passenger 57, always bet on black. I gotta be honest, fellas. I'm not racist with a capital R, but like, I just don't really bet against black athletes much, man. I'm sorry. I've been around black people a long time. It's all normal distributions and they overlap a ton, but the black people are just really good at this shit. And like,
so you think Tyson's going to kick his ass? You think
no, I'll be very specific. I think Jake Paul's probably going to win, but there is a chance that Tyson catches him with a hook and it's over. You ever see Mike Tyson hit things?
Dude.
Typically there's no things left over after he hits them. And his close in range with his fucking hooks and shit and his uppercuts, like, all you have to do is get caught with one liver shot, uppercut, real close in. That's where Tyson thrives. He knows how to cover up too. And if Jake Paul's going to fight a good fight, it's probably going to be a distance management fight. And I just don't want to do a distance management fight against Mike Tyson. Fuck that. Anyone else. Now, Tyson doesn't have crazy reach, which is a big advantage for Jake Paul. He doesn't have to deal with, like, if he was fighting like Evander Holyfield or some shit, he'd be like, all right, stay 7 feet away from him and you'll be totally fine. But like, and Tyson's not going to have crazy endurance, but Tyson also knows how to manage his workflow. He's been fighting his whole life. He's not going to just gas out randomly. He's going to know when he's got it, when he doesn't. And also, in order to knock him out, you got to get real close to him. And that's a big fucking problem. Because again, he's Mike Tyson, and black, white, whatever. He's fucking Mike Tyson. So
he's Mike Tyson. Dude, there was a video of him on BJJ Fanatics.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw his video on BJJ Fanatics. They did a
heavy bag video.
Bro, dude, I just was like, holy shit. Like, just the hooking power, like, of his hips. And I did have a question though. I want to be respectful of your time. But I am really curious on this. You've been in the jiu-jitsu game, been in the bodybuilding game, exercise science, you've obviously educated to the 10th degree or whatnot. My question is, from a practical perspective, what types of things do you do on a regular basis to help avoid injury, maintain, and maintain longevity in your training? Because I'm trying to do this till as old as I could be. And I'm really, really curious, like, supplementation maybe, but more so like protocols that you believe in, from warm-ups to cool downs to how much is too much. Like, how do you stay in the game for the rest of your life?
I'd say there are 3 things that I can recommend that work really well. Thing 1 is doing full range of motion weight training, so that you're bulletproofed against being weak in any position and having anything exposed. Like, if I can do a skull crusher with whatever weight where I touch my nose and come back up, I can do a jam press and I can do a close grip press and I can do overhead work for my lats. Anything in jiu-jitsu where you're lying on top of me and I have to frame up, I'm good. And I'm not going to, it's highly unlikely I'm going to get hurt because I've put my body with maximum loads into the weakest possible positions. When you're on top of me, it's probably not a maximum load, and I can at least move into a stronger position. But if you put me in my weakest position, I've been there before. So super deep stretch ranges of motion with progressively heavier and heavier weights, it's just going to bulletproof you. I mean, like, you roll with someone, let's say you got 2 guys to roll again, one super skinny dude and one super jack dude, and your coach is like, hey, I know this is fucked up, but these guys are both like pedophile rapists or whatever. I want you to hurt them, like, injure them. The skinny guy, clearly. It's like look at that guy's traps. How the hell am I going to hurt him? And like, to bulletproof yourself against injury, being jacked and strong really, really helps. Because another person can't really injure you. You just have to like move your knee weird and tweak your own shit to get hurt, which is like half the injuries in jiu-jitsu anyway. The second thing I'd have to say is overall workload management. When you start accumulating a lot of fatigue because you're hard rolling way too much, your body becomes literally less athletic. As your general fatigue rises, you start to become, you ever feel like when you've been doing jiu-jitsu for a few too many days straight hard, you feel like a tin man, kind of like Frankenstein? You lose that fluidity, and losing fluidity multiplies your chance of injury because you're going to put your body in the wrong position and going to put one muscle or one joint to take the strain. A lot of injury prevention is a matter of like moving fluidly through high forces to get out of the way of the really bad shit. You aren't able to do that as much. In addition to that, high levels of fatigue literally fray your joints and connective tissues and tendons and muscles, and they micro tear them. And if you don't take some easy days to let that shit recover before you ramp up the training again, if you're just going hard all the time, and in any given week, your body's theoretically capable of recovering from 20 hard rolls, but you do 25 hard rolls, at some number of weeks, you're just going to fucking break. It's just physics at that point. Like your car is rated to go, 60 miles an hour for 20,000 miles, but you're at 30,000 miles, you've been doing 80 miles an hour, like car's going to break. It's just a thing that happens. So volume management's a really big deal. You want to roll all the time. Don't. Mix in some combination of technique and drilling, which is nobody likes to drill. Nobody likes to drill, except we all know from the old wrestling lore, drillers make killers, right? And so drilling is really good. Also, you're not going to get hurt drilling. I mean, if you are, you just kind of had it coming. Positional sparring and then live rolling, right? So you got to combine all three of those into the typical week. Sometimes you do more, sometimes less. If you have a tournament coming up, you do more live rolling. If the tournament's far away, you do more positional work and more technique, but not just going in there and doing way too much every single week and tons of live rolling. That's point number 2. And point number 3, especially for long-term longevity, into your older years, is actually a really simple rule of thumb for me is when you're rolling even live, you calmly, with force, but calmly execute known jiu-jitsu techniques. You're only ever executing jiu-jitsu techniques. You're never doing the thing where the white belts grab each other by the lapels and you go, you guys know what I'm talking about? Like,
yeah, I know.
And like hip tossing someone, but it's not a hip toss. You're just like muscling them down. Those ultra high forces outside of the typical parameters and how you move your body and co-contracting all of your muscles and grinding, and also rage stuff like getting out of the bottom, not through like a flow movement, but like trying to push the guy off of you. That's what's going to get you hurt.
But how would that relate to like non-jiu-jitsu, I guess is my question. Like if you're Gabe, who's not interested in jiu-jitsu right at this point, he will be next month. I just mean more from like, if you're a dad out there and you want to.
Oh, I see. I thought you meant jiu-jitsu specific. My bad. I answered that wrong the entire time. Well, hopefully jiu-jitsu people can get some good wisdom out of that one.
No, I mean, that's great too for jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
I just mean for like, for Gabe and I, like,
Yeah. So full range of motion lifting is huge. Making sure that if you're doing lifting if you're lifting, it's with good technique. And if your technique starts to slip, don't you get that fucking ego about it. So many injuries happen because guys did 10 reps of curl, but they wanted 11. And that last one, they're like, and then the bicep goes. And they're like, that kind of had that coming. Point number 2 is also the same, overall fatigue management. If you get real beat up, take some light days, take some recovery days, take some easy days. You're not going to lose strength. You're just going to gain it. And you're going to allow your injuries and micro tears that you haven't felt yet to heal. So that's a really big deal. And so those 2 things, using good technique and making sure not to overdo the weekly volume is a big deal. Another one is if you've taken some time off or away, ramp slowly back into your normal volumes and loads. Don't be like, I'm like 2 weeks. I was traveling with my wife. Japan is a really fun country. Now I'm coming back to training 5x5, fucking right into the teeth with my best lifts ever. That's how you get hurt. You got to roll into the shit slowly. And if it sucks, like you don't want to be patient. You don't want to do 2 sets of squats today. You want to do 5, but do 2 sets today. Next week, do 3. The week after, do 4. And then you get to go back to 5. You're going to get great gains and you're not going to snap your shit in half. So from a training perspective, those are kind of the big recommendations. Another one is like overall sleep and stress management is a big deal. Sleep is when your body does most of its healing. So if you're not getting sufficient sleep of high quality, you need to handle that shit because that's how you're going to heal. As far as supplements, there are no empirically validated supplements for joint health that just don't exist. Now, that means some supplements can be good for joint health, but we just don't have the scientific veracity to be like, yes, these are for sure good for you. Like collagen, for example, a lot of studies say it works. Industry funded studies, a lot of non-industry funded studies say it might not work at all to do anything that you think it does. So it's kind of like, oh, God damn it. Like I thought collagen was cool for a few months and then the other studies came out and I was like, fuck. So there's not any supplements like, hey, real talk, like pharmaceutical grade growth hormone will heal every fucking injury you've ever had and it'll heal injuries in the future you didn't even know you're going to have. But like that can't exactly recommend that to guys. It's like, it's not something you go to your doctor unless you're like HIV positive or whatever. Like I need more vials of Serostim. He's like, you got it. So that shit really works, but not exactly over the counter. So the sleep, good stress management, really good technique, progressing into loads really well, and not overtraining and overreaching chronically is just like, that's what is going to make you the most injury resistant you can. And that's a big deal because first of all, the shit really works. And second of all, it's not some shit you typically hear from people in the space because when guys want to hear like what's going to keep me low risk and injury free and recovery, they want some weird mobility protocol, which by the way, full range of motion lifting is that protocol. So you don't have to get on the fucking Bosu ball, do dumb shit like that. And they want supplements. Guys want supplements. So what pill do I take to prevent injury? Well, motherfucker, guess what? When we have one of those, I'll be singing its praises on YouTube every fucking day. I want that pill. It just does not exist. So it really comes down to managing your training intelligently, knowing when to push the gas slowly and knowing when to back off. It's really similar to how you would take care of a car. Imagine you like have a Lambo in your garage. You haven't driven it in 2 weeks. You don't really know if the oil levels or whatever are checked. You get in, you start it and you just get out in the street and slam it, floor it, crank the gears. Like someone who's going to be like, are you sure about this? You're like, yeah, fuck it. Your Lambo's going to break. You're like, yeah, whatever. I'm rich. But the thing is, you can buy spare Lambo parts. You can't buy a spare elbow yet. So you got to treat your body like a very exotic car. You're going to ease the shit into it. You're going to figure out how it's working. You're going to read all the dials. When the dials are in the red line, you got to back up. A lot of the stuff that gets people hurt, guys, it's just ego. Like, all right, I wanted a good workout on Thursday, but like my knee kind of hurts and it kind of hurt last week and now it hurts a little worse. Fuck it. Heavy metal in the fucking headphones, squats. Let's do it. Oh shit, my knee. A lot of times it's like, okay, today is not the day to draw the sword. Today I do some lighter loads. I do a different exercise. I take the rest of the weekend off. I come back in with squats and I start building up slowly. And then, hey, you may never get hurt doing that. Is it as glorious? No. Does it work? Yeah, hell yeah, it works.
Yeah. One of the things that I heard you say on one of the podcasts I listened to prepping for this was just that consistency is the most important piece that is just missing from people that plateau. And I think that, everything you just talked about with injury prevention just plays into that because if you, step back far away enough, it's consistency over, the year, over 5 years, over 3 years. And you're going to be so much more consistent if you didn't go super hard for 60 days even, but then, banged up your knee or for whatever reason got burnt out and then you took another 30 days off. The person that's taking it nice and easy, striking when the iron's hot, taking it easy when they need to, but they train very consistently for 3 years is going to way outdo the progress that you're doing by going hot and cold. So I think that's the best advice out there. Yeah,
I love it. To that point on consistency, to me, consistency, if you don't have it, I'm going to say this comedically. I don't really mean this, but like, I'm just not interested in talking to you about any other fitness questions you have.
Yeah.
Because like, you're not going to do it. It gives a shit. Like you guys like, yeah, I've been lacking a little consistency lately, but like, what's the best exercise for chest? Like, oh yeah, I looked it up. It's go fuck yourself. It's a great exercise. It's super fun, but it's like, dude, what are you talking about? Why don't you start training your chest week on, week out? And then once you get a good roll going, then you can start to ask questions of like, what specifically do I do? You know what I mean? You gotta have consistency is the baseline for everything. And when guys are inconsistent, it's like, if you don't believe in yourself to show up, why am I going to spend my breath talking to you about like what you should be doing? You don't even train, bro. Like, it's like someone asking you like at a party just for fun. I get it. But someone asking you like, hey, what's like the best move in jiu-jitsu? Like, do you do jiu-jitsu? Like, no. how are you going to understand my answer? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Wow. Dude, I gotta tell you, this has been a very entertaining and fun conversation. And I feel like I could talk to you for many, many more hours about many different subjects. I feel like we barely scratched the surface here.
It's the opposite of what my ex-wife told me. Or am I?
I feel like I need one of those like
little drum set things.
Yeah.
Oh, Mike's trying to be funny again. Make sure to laugh at his jokes and weird stare at addict. He'll get upset if you don't.
But we got to do this again. I want to be respectful of your time. You know, I think that I don't know, man, Gabe, I've really, dude, this has been a great conversation, but I feel like we're barely getting the depth that I want to get in. So I'd love to get you back on, especially talking about, you know, your actual education, that background and working you that side of you, versus the bodybuilding and jiu-jitsu side of you.
Sure. And I'd love to, thank you so much, guys. It's been super, super fun. And also, I'd love to come back on and maybe we can broach the subject you and I originally wanted to broach, which is like, if you're doing jiu-jitsu and you want to be better at it, what are you supposed to do for two other things? One is conditioning and the other is like strength work in the gym. Or is it just, do you just go to jiu-jitsu, or do you like get a Bosu ball? You do like upside down seal squats? How do you approach strength and conditioning for jiu-jitsu? I have like can easily fill another several hours of blabbing uselessly with shitty analogies about that. So let me know.
No, we need to have you back on. I know we wanted to talk about that. I mean, I had questions written down about systematic versus isolated fatigue, RIR versus RPE. Your point about general warm-up and specific warm-up and wasting time at the gym. I love that because I think so many people waste so much time at the gym. So, I mean, we got plenty of stuff that we can talk about next time. So I'm gonna keep these notes and we'll definitely have to have you back on.
Yeah.
So we'll keep the notes and then we'll add in there. Well, maybe we'll have a third, maybe, you know what we'll do? We'll do the notes for the next one. And the third episode, we'll do nothing but just like, bro, if you're a jiu-jitsu athlete and you're not hitting these things, you're missing out because, like this whole notion that, hey, if you're a grappler, you don't need strength is, you know,
it's a fun thing to say until the D1 jacked wrestler lifter guy peels your fucking leg out of your ass. And you're like, how many times have you done jiu-jitsu? Like, this is his first time. And you're like, all my techniques, I thought I knew them,
dude. So that's the subject. But Mike, we really appreciate you. I mean, if people want to engage, I mean, dude, just check you guys out. We're going to do it. You know, we have an intro before this, but your YouTube, I think, has a ton of engaging and educational content on it. Is that the best place for people to kind of go check out you know, your content?
Yeah, totally. The YouTube's great. We have 5 videos every week on the main channel. They're all some combination of attempts at informative and attempts at humorous. Maybe the humor doesn't always land. I will say, don't unless you have really like badass children, don't listen to our channel around your kids because there's the occasional sexual reference and swear word. Maybe it's not so occasional, but for adults, it's loads of fun.
Oh man. Well, on that note, we appreciate you guys for checking us out. Go back, check out the other episodes. We drop them multiple times a week and keep training hard.